So we're here with Troy Luccketta, great drummer and musician from various groups, and we're just going to talk about drumming and drumming concepts. So, thanks, Troy, for being here.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, Rob. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there.
Awesome, man. So
Oh,
am I. I'm doing exactly that, too.
so the first thing I want to ask you is about who were your mentors growing up, as far as drumming or life. And just
Um,
tell us a little bit about the background about you growing up, I guess in Sacramento.
well, actually, no, I'm actually from Dublin, California, where I grew up. And then I had moved to the Bay Area in 1973 Hayward, California, when my parents had divorced in my freshman year. So basically, my story is I discovered some friends of mine down the street had a snare drum, and I was 10 years old, and they said, "Hey," and they drug me into this garage, and they always knew I wanted to play drums. I'd never even been around a drum. It was pretty freaking amazing. When I think back, it's just like it was yesterday, man. Because I remember standing around the drum, and they handed me a pair of spoons because they didn't have any sticks. And I don't know where they got the drum, but anyway, I just remember, I used to hear on the radio, so I was like, Wipeout, baby, right? I played Wipeout, and I remember these kids. I'm looking up, excuse me, and they were just like, wow, they lit up like a Christmas tree. And so did I, man. And I knew right then and there, man, that was my calling. That's what I wanted to do. I just thought, lived, eat, and breathed drums in my mind of not having drums. But I had a paper route and a second paper route, and I got a third paper route. I had the Oakland Tribune. I was young. And I had the Oakland Tribune for a short time. That was, I remember, because it started with the Green Sheet and the Independent. Well, the Green Sheet was the local, and the Independent was. I later got in with the third paper out with the Oakland Tribune because I remember I come home from school, and I remember Jimi Hendrix being on the cover, Overdose, 1973. I'd have to go back and see, but I remember, that might have been 72. I'd have to go back and check the date on that, but I remember coming home and seeing that, and I was like, wow, because I used to listen to Are You Experienced, and that was one of the records I used to play to with Mitch Mitchell. But my youth years, I was self-taught as a player, so I didn't have any formal education. I took snare drum in 7th and 8th grade, or maybe it was 7th grade, maybe it was 7th grade. Or 8th grade. I can't even remember. My memory's not the best, but you got to remember I'm getting a little older now, so I'm starting to forget things. But anyway, as it would turn out, I played a little snare drum for a minute, and that was about it. A little bass drum in a marching band, and that was it. I had a friend of mine later in my years. I started playing music, and the first song I ever played was "Proud Mary" by Ike and Tina Turner. And my first set of drums, was $55, Crest, Marine Pearl, 10 years old, and through my paper routes, and that's how I got started. I could continue to just keep going, or I could let you speak and ask another question, or I could keep talking about.
So you growing up, so you kind of were self-motivated, you were self-taught, you had the paper routes, and you bought the kit, which I remember those kits. There was Astro, there was Crest. I remember those kits when I was a kid. When you were starting to play, was there any mentors that you had? Was it other musicians,
No,
family
no classes.
members? Uh,
I didn't have, at that time, I didn't have any mentors playing wise, because, I never thought about taking lessons. Never even occurred to me. I was just playing to my mom's records, and I was listening to music on the radio, and I had the drums set up. It didn't have a hi hat, and I remember from one of my birthdays, my mom and my sister and brother kind of all pitched in and helped me to get a hi-hat, and we added the hi-hat, and I just kind of started slamming away, and when by the time my parents divorced in 73 and I ended up in Hayward, my sister, God bless her, I remember a guitar showcase in San Jose. She took me down. There was a double bass red acrylic set of drums that I got. And my son has those to this day. So she bought me a nice set of drums. They were double bass. I was not a double bass player. But speaking of mentors and people and things that started to change and started to kind of shape me a little bit, I played in a band, local band, when I was 17, 18. I was playing in a band, Benny and the Jets, and Keith Bellino, his brother, Steve Bellino, great, great drummer. And I used to walk in to their house, and in the back they had a little shed, and Steve was always back there frickin' just shedding his ass off. I mean, the guy his favorite drummer was Jeff McCall. So he was playing back then. I would always hear him playing Little Miss the Boat That Day, shuffling and grooving. I didn't even know how to play a shuffle. I was a frickin' rock and roll smasher basher guy. But I'd been playing some music at the time, but the Boss Gag Silk Degrees record he turned me on to, which was something I got really interested in, Jeff, and he turned me on to the Gad thing. I remember us watching up close when that came out on Starlix, was it? Was that where that came from? I can't remember. Maybe it was Hudson. I can't. Anyway, point being, no, Starlix was Jeff's. And but the up close video, so we had that, but we had this routine. He taught me we get on a practice pad, and he taught me how to do a double stroke roll. I didn't even know how to do a double stroke roll until I was probably 18 years old. I mean, seriously. And my hands sucked, I had nothing, But what we did do is he brought out syncopation, and he started taking me through syncopation. So we would sit there and do the quarter notes, then we do the eighth notes, and then we do the 16ths, and the dotteds and the triplets and such, and and we'd work through the book, and we'd do maybe 20 reps of each. We'd go through them, and then we do the exercise. But we got to a point where we made our own little workout routine, and because we were so consistent working together, we really got really tight on it, as drummers do. We put on the click track and we go, and we would just go through all these different little warm-up exercises. And that was probably, when I think of a mentor today, I would say that Steve Bellino was the guy that truly, up until as far as taking full-on lessons, even with Scott Morris, who I studied with for a minute, but there are guys that really shaped me and changed my playing, believe it or not, was Steve Bellino and you. Well, that's a fact. That's not because you're sitting here and I'm doing this interview with you. It's just stating the facts. But, because all those years I was playing music, I got into the Gino Vanellis and Mark Craney and Brother to Brother and all the stuff. And I loved the Gad and I loved Paul Simon. And, but I was still playing big rock and roll drums, and playing in those kinds of bands. But I had this side of me that was just trying to get an understanding of all the other stuff. And because I didn't have a teacher, outside of Steve, you might be my first real teacher. And we studied for a year together, and that changed my life, by the way. That changed everything and completely shaped me, to this day.
I remember that you were studying with Scott. I remember that. And then you had come to me. I remember the phone call I got. And I used to advertise in a magazine called BAM Magazine, Bay Area Music Magazine. And that's where I got, a lot of calls, actually. That did really well for me. I just kept the ad in there forever. It was 20 years or something, just the ad in BAM Magazine till it folded.
I don't know if you remember the story. I called Steve Smith.
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to study with Steve. And he's like, "Hey, Troy, I'm really busy. You need to call this guy Rob Hart. He gave you a high recommendation. Studied at Berkeley, and because he did, I didn't question. I just called, and it was almost an hour drive for me to get to you over the bridge back and forth, but it was well worth the drive. And I think I was pretty consistent that year,
Yeah, you were.
you know. And I was doing the classical piano I had taken too. I've never been a great student. I coined myself the good example of a bad example. And I'm in high school, in schools talking to kids. I just turned 27 years sober, so I take that into schools now. But
I saw that on your website. Troy shows up.
.com, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. That's really great.
Thank you. But coming back to getting with you, it was beautiful because there was no history with us. We had never met. I came in and it was beautiful, man. You just started me over, and it was exactly what I needed. There was no anything pretentious about where I'd been or what I'd done. I already done 10 years and basically wrote my full career with Tesla right in the first 10 years. Here I come home and I just started completely over. And by the way, I did exactly the same thing. I put an ad. You know what I did, Rob? God's honest truth. I put the ad in the magazine that said, Troy Luccketta from Tesla now accepting students. Within a week, I think I had 25 students because of the name, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, wow, boom. So I'm teaching, but I was staying ahead of my students staying with you because I just took everything you taught me and I just danced. I did. And not only was I getting more flight hours in, I was becoming a teacher, and I had never taught in my life. So you taught me how to become a teacher, and actually I love teaching, and I do teach, and I have a skill set to teach and a lot of experience today now because of. But if it hadn't been that year with you, that was a game changer for me. It really was. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So when you were let's say you're playing to records and you're listening to Mitch Mitchell, John Bonham, probably in the 70s where everything was hitting because for me, like these bands, whether I liked it or not, was in my face when I was in high school. So can you talk a little bit about your influences from records and bands growing up that influenced the way you play?
Absolutely. That's a great question because that's really where it happened for me. It was all about listening to music and playing music, the studying thing, which started with Steve later, wasn't until I was in my late teens. So prior to that, everything I was doing, I was in a lot of original bands. So, but the music I was growing up to at the time, I remember being young, playing a lot of the Creedence stuff and putting on records, and I loved a lot of the R&B music, but I really didn't play much of it. But I was playing, some of the Sabbath stuff, the Zeppelin stuff, the covers, and it was probably actually with Steve later, getting into my 20s. That's where things started to change because I was always in original bands, and I coined myself even before I got into Tesla, and it really didn't happen until Tesla, because my first record I made was I was 23, 1983, I think it was, and but prior to that, it was I was in original bands, and when you're not playing a lot of covers, which I wasn't, I was never in a cover band. I mean, I am now, and I play a lot of covers now, and I play in a 70s band, and I try to play as much as I can. But I realize that's the stuff that shapes you. It gives you some stuff. But I fell into something on my own. One guy that was a huge, huge influence of mine was a guy, Leonard Hayes, from the band Yesterday and Today, before they were YMT. And I was 15. They were running around, playing. And I remember going to Hayward Weeks Park and catching them a lot there. And I was in a band called Whisper and No Thanks, and Benny and the Jets. And we would play with Mile High. And then there was 415, which I ended up joining later. and that became the Eric Martin Band. But playing and watching Leonard, because there was John Bonham and then there was Leonard Hayes. I don't think there was nobody that had the foot Leonard had. I mean, and he had a really unique way of having his own thing going on when he was playing, and I was really loved what was happening with him. So he was probably a guy I spent a lot of time listening to and growing up, and I got to meet him and know him later. And then, obviously we went out, we were managed by Herbie Herbert, who managed Journey. And, speaking of Steve, I seen Steve Smith when he was playing with Ronnie Montrose at the Old Waldorf before he even did the gig, and then he ended up with Journey. I don't know if you remember those days, but right after he came off John LaPonte. At any rate, I was like, wow, who's this guy, And then he hit the scene, and I was like, everybody talked about it. He's the talk of the town, still to this day, obviously. Phenomenal. And Steve was good to me, He was really cool. We got to spend a little time together, and when we went on the tour together, he got to share. I got to go out with him a few evenings. I was really cautious of his time. I wasn't all over him, but one night I remember we grabbed the limo and he said, hey, let's go out. We hung out and we went to a bar, and I remember him, it was a cover band playing, and he sat in, and he didn't just play like a song or two. I think he played the whole set, and I was like, wow, that was great. But we were in Hawaii with them for 5 sold-out shows. But being around those people, all those great drummers, him and Gad Picard. See, I never thought anything of my playing. I never really thought I was a very good drummer because I knew who the great guys were, and I certainly wasn't that guy. But I did have an aspiration to be, after the Eric Martin Band, after I did my first record and a couple of years with that and getting some sea legs, so to speak, and getting some flight miles in, and then, touring and such. And then I had, done quite a bit of recording up to that point. And Steve was very sweet. After even with the record, I remember he really liked the record. He complimented me really, really well. And even at that time, I remember him pulling me aside saying, hey, man, he just got done recording Heaven with Bryan Adams. Remember that? And he'd come up to me on that tour and he says, hey, Troy, I got a great gig for you, man. And I was blown away, like, what are you talking about, Because I'm out here we're opening, same manager. I think we're happening. Everything's going great. Maybe he knew something I didn't know. Who knows? But he goes, yeah, Bryan Adams, man. And Frankie the Rocker was doing it at the time. And Frankie was a great drummer. And I thought he was a much better drummer than I was. But Steve seen something in me, obviously, which was cool. And I passed on even going down that road. It wasn't something I wouldn't have been able to do it for the simple fact I didn't believe I could do it. So therefore I couldn't do it. Because when you go into something like that, you got to be confident and know. And, he had Mickey Curry and some of those guys. And I might have had the goods and could have done it. I don't know. Today I know I'd be fine. I get that. But at the time I was 23, 4 years old. So, but at any rate, I didn't have, my mentors were just guys that I would be able to get with. And Steve was kind enough one night to bring me over to his house and, hung out. And Susan was out of town at the time. And it was in Nevada. And, I just basically watched him play drums all night. It was cool. I just sat there and listened to him. It was great. I think I left his house at like 8 o'clock in the morning. It was after a rehearsal. I ran into him in Nevada, and he came down to the rehearsal. And then, anyway, we used to rehearse in the Journey warehouse, and there's a lot of great stories that go back and memories that I have from that. And I haven't talked to Steve in years, but I have nothing but respect for the man and the fact that he introduced me to you. And, but mentors, it wasn't... I don't know, man. I'm really spent a lot of time on my own over the years. I've had people I listened to, but over the years that's changed. But early on, I didn't have a lot to draw from.
Well, there's what's amazing is that you went from practicing to records and kind of finding your way, and then I guess playing in original bands, but yet you broke through and you started touring and you know, Eric Martin and then Tesla and you guys had hit songs. And I mean, how do you go from like practicing or playing to records to like getting that gig where you're out touring and experiencing what it's like to be playing in front of millions of people, or you know, at these stadiums and the nerves and you know, playing at that high level and playing consistent and you know, having that almost would you say courage and you know, confidence in your playing to do that. Because to me, that's like very like not everybody can do that. That's my thing. Like people can play gigs, but doing that next step of breaking through to that major circuit of touring. And back in the day when you're, I mean, I remember you were touring constantly,
Yeah.
constantly.
Well, you know,
How
those are
did
more.
that happen?
You get those flight hours. I mean, basically, what happened was after the Eric Martin band, you know, wasn't we had a one record deal, and they weren't picking up the second option. We went into Herbie's office, Herbie Herbert, manager, and it was over basically. And I remember driving home on the Bay Bridge, and that's funny, interesting enough, because I couldn't have been happier when I mean, I just lost my gig, right? The band just broke up. And Rob, the honest to God truth, I just was driving across the Bay Bridge, and I was happy. I was glad. I don't even know why. I didn't have a gig, but I was like, I just felt great about it. And I went home, and I started working at Nocturne, which was in the Journey warehouse. With Nocturne was Journey, was another. They had Nightmare Productions, and then Nocturne was where they did the stage building inside the front of the warehouse, and they had the rehearsal in the back. I don't know if you'd ever been over there in Alameda, but I used to go there, and I used to work there, man. I did a lot of work there, and but anyway. I ended up getting a phone call from this guy, Dwayne Hitchens, and Dwayne was in Cactus with Carmine Appice back in the day, and he was over at Eddie Money's house, and we had been out. Eric Martin was out with Eddie Money doing some dates, and Gary Ferguson was the drummer. He did the No Control record, and Gary was a great drummer, and Gary and I got to be pretty good friends because we were doing dates as the opening band with Eddie. So this guy Dwayne comes over from Eddie's house in Oakland, hop, skipping, and jumping to San Leandro, and he comes over and he wanted to play me this new band he was working with called City Kid, which is Tesla, same band. They had a different drummer. They had a drum machine on this 2-song demo he played me, and I listened to it, and I thought Jeff had an interesting voice, you know, and I wanted to kind of pursue what was going on, but he let me know, and this is another game changer for me. It's kind of like, you know, that Kenny Aronoff's got that. That's my ice maker in the back making a bunch of noise. If you hear it going grinding back there, it'll stop in a second. But it was a game changer for me because he said to me, he said, look, Troy, he said, come check out this band. But for some reason, if you're not interested, he said, Eddie was asking about you. And I was like, and I already knew what the gig paid. It paid $750 a week. But let me tell you something. 1984, I'm like $750 a week. You know that most. Think about that for a minute. Go with this band, unknown band. Go try this thing, or go for that Eddie Money gig. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I think I don't know how many people, but the decision I made was like, I want to be in a band. You know, that was the game changer right then and there, because it's like, man, I'm going to roll the dice again on this thing. But it's like the lottery. I mean, you might have a better shot at the lottery. I mean, it's a very tough business, as we both know. And I just, man, I went out there and I watched them 2 nights. They were playing covers and some mixed originals. And when I watched the band, I remember watching the second night. I brought my wife with me to see what she thought, because I had to have her, you know, blessing on it. And I remember watching Brian, the bass player. then I watched Tommy Skew, and I'm like, well, there's your rock star. And then I'm watching Frank, and he's playing 17 years old behind his head, keyboards, and just great little player, young. And then I watched Jeff, and after I started watching Jeff, he had me the whole night. And that's when I realized, I thought, you know what? This is going to happen. I'm going to do this. And I knew that the only thing missing from that equation was me. And I just had something inside of me. And I didn't come in there with an attitude like I had done anything. I came in as one of them, and I just kept my place and wanted to grow with the band, and not like I had any experience. But I knew that I had enough experience what I could bring as a player and a drummer, and I just knew I was the missing link to that band. And that's when I figured out who I was going to be in that band. And because you had John Bonham and you had Jeff Porcaro, I'm like, man, I'm going right down the middle of that road. I got to have enough finesse, groove, pocket. I can't solo. I suck at solos. So I'm not a soloist. But if I could just focus on my pocket and my groove and playing and become a song guy, which I am, I really am all about the song. And I learned about that early on, and I think that's, and after the first record came out, it hit, and we went out with David Lee Roth, and Bissonette was out with David on the Eat 'Em and Smile tour, 1987, and we're out for 2 months with David. Then we come home and we're out, with Alice Cooper, and then we're out with right after that we did 15 months on the Hysteria tour with Def Leppard, and I mean that's we're out for almost 2 years, so just on that one record. And then we come home, make a record, to go do all that stuff again. And we were in arenas the first 9 years. And then the last year when the grunge scene kicked in the 90s, middle of the 90s, we went back into like theaters and stuff. But it's all those flight hours and playing. And quite honestly, Rob, we weren't playing to a click track live. So every time I'd see something of us or this or that, people would think how great it was. And, the only thing I could find were all the shortcomings, man. I couldn't see the big picture. I didn't think it was, even when we made the first record, I remember not being that really happy, like I felt like I should. Today I am, looking back. I was just chewing a bubble, It's kind of like, I understand the Buddy thing, I mean, from what I understand, Buddy Rich was that way, right? Never happy, but this, could always be better thing. And I could never get that where I wanted to be, but looking back at it, and I could still find everything that's wrong with it, but who's to argue that, right? But that's where that confidence had built over the years, and grown over the years. And, and I met a lot of wonderful people, I mean, over the years. And, it was those first 10 years. And then I came home and the band broke up in 96. And next thing I know, I'm calling you.
Did you have to audition for Tesla?
I did. They wanted me. They knew they wanted me.
Oh, okay. So they already had
heard. My attitude in the beginning, I was auditioning them. They didn't know that.
Okay.
Of course. But that's how I felt. I mean, I really was auditioning them. But by the time I seen them, and then I was like, no, I'm auditioning for this band, and I want it. But yeah, it was something. And I mean, at that time, well, it wasn't until 96 when Tesla broke up. It's funny, I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, and I just got done reviewing and editing the first 100 pages of it. It'll be done next 6-8 weeks, but be out by I'll probably put out first of the year. But point being, going through all these things makes me reflect on things, and some of the stories that are in there, right after coming home with you. I don't know if you remember, I went in for a Mellencamp audition. Do you remember that?
No.
It might have been before you. Maybe it was right. Yeah, you know what? I bet it was probably, I think it was right before you, probably, because you would have known about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had an offer for the Satriani thing. And both those things, I actually flew out to Bloomington, 16 drummers, and, the audition went great. I talked about it in my book, and I was just reading through the story. I was like, well, that's exactly how it happened, They had 8 drummers on Saturday on the hour, and then I was the first guy Sunday, and I got off the plane. Me and Myron Grumbacher and Pat Torpy flew in together. I took the same limo into Bloomington, and it was all paid for, bought and paid for. Jeff Jonas, who's tech for Ringo Starr, he was the guy over at the Drum Paradise, I guess it was. I thought, how'd they get my number? I thought there was some play. But at any rate, audition went great, and they actually sat me down, talked to me about doing it. I was the only guy John didn't see. They wanted me to stick around and meet John, and they told me how I was the first guy to come in. They said all this wonderful stuff, and I did really do. I just was Kenny. I gave them 100% of everything I had to be Kenny, and that's what I did. That's all I knew to do, But they let me know a lot of people didn't do that. That I was the first guy to come in and really, be prepared. I guess maybe I don't know, but I was prepared. I work at something when I want something, and I do my homework. You have to. You can't just fall into these things.
Yeah, that's my other question. The next question is about how do you prepare? How do you prepare for the gig or the tour? What you're saying that you want something, and how do you go about preparing and memorizing the songs? And do you practice at home? Do you listen? What is your method of prepping for a tour?
Well, when it comes time to do a tour or a Tesla tour, there's, the thing about what we do, it becomes pretty consistent, because either if you're opening on a big tour, you're only getting, 45 minutes or so, 40 minutes if you're the opening band for Def Leppard, like we were at the time. Once we got into headlining arenas in '92, we have a full production and, 4 tour buses and, 4 semis and 30, 40 people working for you. That's a different experience, and that's a wonderful experience to be able to, the fact that we got there. 2 nights sold out at Red Rocks. It was amazing, the stuff that was happening with Tesla, that I was just mind-boggled on. But what happened in preparation for a tour, first of all, there's a set list that you're going to rehearse. So and the band's going to rehearse, and you're going to rehearse part of that production, with your LD and your sound man. So you get in and do a few days in an arena, which we did in Hershey, Pennsylvania, where we rehearsed. I remember that, where we started the tour. And that was a Psychotic separate tour. But all the tours are basically the same. We're going to get in, we're going to rehearse. And what would happen for me is, back then, a lot of the bands always had a custom drum kit. So that was part of something I'd like to do. And I always had a custom drum kit and a custom paint job, and do something, to add to the visual. And it was fun. It was rock and roll. That's what people did, all the stuff I was doing on the side, I think it was '89 Mark Bonilla, and that's where you have to start really doing your homework. When in a band, you're doing the rehearsals, and that is your homework, and you're playing and you're working together, and then it's coming together, and then you just have to go back and play the record, and physically just be in shape, stay in shape, and be able to deliver every night, be consistent. And I had a kid out there on the road that I would play and practice and pads. And I've always done that since I started with Steve Bellino. That's what got me into playing pads, And then, the other stuff that was started to come up when I started to branch out and started to get a chance to do other records for people. Some of it, you don't get any rehearsal. You just jump in and you're prepared. And if there's music, you learn it, With Mark, I had a chance to do 4 rehearsals with him before we cut the first record, and we only had 2 days to do it. And Don Frank had to. He's a drummer out there, local guy. I don't know if you know Don, great drummer. And he
from
did
Gelb Music,
songs.
Right?
Huh?
Gelb Music. He's from Gelb Music.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and he was on 2 of the tracks, and I think I did 7 of the tracks or 8 of the tracks, I forget, on his first album. And that was the first record. We recorded it over Saturday and Sunday. So that got done. But I prepared to learn the songs. Matter of fact, first time I heard some of Mark's stuff, I'm like, Mark, you need to find a real drummer, because he had some stuff with Odd Time and some crazy stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if I could play this stuff. But I had to prepare and, and work at it. So, I mean, it's just putting the time in. You got to put the flight hours in. However you get that done, we all have a method of those survival skills, right? That whatever it's going to take to get that gig, get that job, So if we don't put the time in, we got nobody but ourselves to blame. But, I did work pretty hard, or hard enough, I guess, because those things seem to work out, and then I do the unknown stuff with Mark, which was really cool, because he was in LA and there was a show, KLOS Christmas show, and the house band was Leland Sklar, Steve Porcaro, and myself and Mark, and we would back up all the artists on the stage for 4 hours, and we'd probably only do maybe 4 or 5 artists in the whole thing, but those are things, but he would just call me and ask me to do these things, and I'd kind of freak out, and I'm like, oh my God, I just say yes, But it was a game changer. He changed my whole world, man. The whole Keith Emerson thing I did was through, I don't know if you know about all that, but that was through Mark.
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about that? Like, so you went from doing, let's say, like one style of rock, and then you went into this progressive rock thing that is iconic with an orchestra. And I think you said you went to Germany.
I did, yeah.
So talk about Mark. Talk about doing the records and how he liked your playing, and how he kept recommending you or kept using you as a producer. So just talk a little bit about that story.
It was 19. So back to Steve Bellino, the guy I was studying with. He was playing with Mark Bonilla in a cover band, and I used to go see him in Concord and Walnut Creek, and they were the kind of band that do 3-4 set gigs. Killer band. Chris Cole was the singer, and I think Glenn Lutz playing bass on that one. I think he was. Played a Gamma, great player. And at any rate, so one night he couldn't make a gig. Talk about a game changer, man. I mean, I've had quite a few. When I think about it, man, I've hit the lottery more than once. But this time, he calls me up and he says, hey, man, I need you to fill in a gig for me. I can't make it. And I used to go watch them. They play 4 sets, and I never played covers. I didn't know those songs. I couldn't go just sit and play all that music. And I just said, absolutely not. I can't go do that. Oh, come on. He started in on me. Oh, come on. And he talks me into doing it. I go, all right. I go, I'll do it. I go, when's rehearsal? He goes, rehearsal? The gig's tomorrow night. And I said, you bastard. And so I showed up, and Mark was the guitar player. And Tesla's first record wasn't out. I remember it like yesterday, club in Concord. Mark would remember the name of it. But I remember it was slow. There was nobody there. So we didn't have to do 4 sets. We had to do 3. And we're doing like take 5, we're doing Power Station. We're doing all this mixed bag of goody music. And I got through it. I didn't even realize how much stuff I could play. And after that, Mark, I hired him on a session that I was producing with this guy, Mike Marnell, out in New York. And then, but Mark basically took the session over, not trying to, but he took control of it. And he was the producer on the project, not me, even though I was. But I was like, oh my God, this guy's phenomenal. Next thing you know, he goes, hey man, I just signed a deal with Warner Brothers for Priest, and I got a solo record coming out. And he goes, I'd really like you to play drums on it. And I go, well, let me hear it. So he sent me over the demos. And one song in particular called Hit and Run. And I was like 9 and 7 and all these changes. That's when I called him back and I said, you need to find a real drummer. And quote unquote, the reason I got the gig, he just goes, I just like the way you hit. And I'm like, well, that 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee, but hey, maybe, all right, I'll come over and we'll walk through this thing. I brought some pads over there to play. Excuse me. And he walked me through the song and the changes and the 7s and the 9s. And I didn't even know how to count that stuff. I knew how to feel it more than I knew how to count it. So that's how I would interpret the music. And the drum machine and the program he did was so great. He had an MPC 60 at the time. And I thought, I don't even think I could beat the drum machine. And if I can't beat the drum machine, what's the point of me doing the record? That's how great the programming was. But we got in, and I did a couple of rehearsals with them after I figured out how to count it and understand where the sevens and nines were and what was happening. And I don't know, we just went in and we did it. It worked out. And it was with a guy named Patrick Leonard's studio, who did Roger Waters and Rod Stewart and Madonna, all his stuff in his studio in L.A. And this guy from Toy Matinee, incredible guy, Kevin Gilbert, was the producer on Mark's first record. So that opened up some doors for me. I couldn't tour or do anything with them. Tessa come out, but that was a big game changer for me, because I went on to do his second record. Toss Panos, phenomenal drummer, played with Steve Vai and everybody, and he played in the Toy Matinee. He was one of my, I love that guy's playing. Just to this day, I think he's phenomenal. But Mark, I don't know, somehow I ended up going back in the studio on the second record after Toss spent a year touring with him, and I ended up on 6 songs on the second record. And, I was like, wow, okay, cool. And I just actually played on this new record, Me and This and That. It just came out. Joe Travers is on it as well. But, yeah, I don't know, man. Mark had kind of stuck by me, and then he'd invite me to do these things at KLOS, and I go back and forth, and we're backing up all these artists, and I'm playing with Leland Sklar and Steve Porcaro, and I'm doing live stuff in the radio stations it just turned into this thing, and it was really strange because Jeff had died, and like the rest of the world, we're all Jeff Porcaro freaks. It's so sad Joe just died, of course, but I should probably know that. But, I hear Steve walks in the door, and we're going to rehearse, and we're at Mark's house, and we're doing stuff off Mark's record, so I know the tunes, and Steve's got to learn them. It's a little different thing, but I'm thinking, my God, this is weird, how am I? He's used to playing with Jeff, man, and now I really don't measure up, you know what I mean? But I just did my thing, and and it worked out. Steve never really ever said anything like, "Hey, good job," or "Good playing," or I never really. Those guys really don't do that. You know what I mean? They just kind of hang and play, and they're professional. We went to this live thing at the radio station, and I guess it was okay. I remember we did it live on the air. Then I did the live show, and then. So I did that for I think I did 3 or 4 years of that off and on, because Bissonette, Simon Phillips was a house drummer, and so was, I think, Greg maybe. And I'd end up on some of those. So I got to hang around some of those guys and watch what was going on, and kind of, when you're around that stuff, you kind of get pulled up, you know what I'm saying? You're just staying focused. I'm watching some of my heroes play some of the shows because there's other artists, and and the next thing I know, let's just fast forward. I did Mark's first record 30 plus years ago now. And, and then in 2011, he asked me to, it was Tony Pia, great drummer. He was doing the Keith Emerson gig, and he joined Doobie Brothers. And he was the second drummer to Ed Toth. And when he took that gig, Mark called me for Keith, and he said, "Hey, we're going to Mongolia, and to play live with this orchestra." And he wanted me to go. And I said yes, because I always say yes, and then I freak out and think, "What did I just sign up for?" But this is I know it's a long-winded story, and I know you, but yeah, so I'm telling you, and this will put a cap on that thing. But so now he asked me to go to Mongolia and play live with this orchestra, and we're doing some EOP music and all this stuff, and I said yes, and then I thought, oh my God, I hung up, and I just remember the fear. Like, what did I was losing sleep every day, every night. And I called Tony P. I talked to him. He sent me some charts. Mark was sending me some music. And And Tony, I just remember Tony telling me, man, don't let the orchestra slow you down, because he had already played with the orchestra in China, and I had some reference stuff, so I was listening to some of his stuff, and I was just, so I could put myself into it, but at the same time, there was a blueprint but still, it's a whole different animal, and it was all like classical music and very, very different than anything I was used to. And then Mark called me about 2 weeks into it, and he goes, "Man, I got some bad news." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "Man, they don't have the budget for you and Travis," which was the bass player. And I got to tell you, man, right then and there, I remember doing this. I go, I was like, God, I'm so, I'm like, and then I get back on the phone like, "Oh, that's a drag, man. I'm really sorry." Which wasn't the case. I was so relieved that I didn't have to go. And so, at any rate, a few weeks passed by, and 3, 4 weeks, I don't know what it was. 3 weeks, he calls me from China, Mark, and he goes, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" "Oh, no, man, I'm just hanging out. We're off the road. I'm home. Nothing's going on." And he goes, "Ah, so you're free right now?" And you just kind of, I said, "Yeah, just, hanging out. How's it going out there?" He goes, "It's not going well, and you need to get out here right now." And he goes, "I need you and I need Travis." And so I flew. I had 1 week to prepare. And I just jumped on my drum kit and I just stayed there for 5 days. And then I met Mark in Los Angeles, and Travis, no rehearsal. Him and I skipped over a couple things when I flew in that day. The next day, myself, and Travis, we flew to Seoul, Korea. Then we flew into Mongolia. And anyway, now I'm going to go record with this orchestra, in Mongolia, live orchestra. It was a live performance. And I remember we got there, and Mongolia's a trip, man. Not many, I don't talk to many people that have been there, but so we're actually getting a drum from a studio here and getting something over. We went to a couple different places just to put a drum kit together. And we did, and we showed up in this beautiful theater, and we walk in, the orchestra's on the stage, and we're walking down, the aisles. Some are walking down here, and we're coming down, and we get to the front of the stage, which is like 5 feet, maybe it's 3, 4 feet high, whatever it is. And we're setting stuff up on the stage, and the conductor's in the middle of the stage with the grand piano and full orchestra, and he stops the orchestra because we just shown up. And, get the drums up on the stage, and I'm setting my stool up and everything. And he introduces all of us, to the orchestra. And I mean, I'm literally, he's over here, and I'm on the side pretty much. And Mark's got a little amp, Travis got amped that full orchestra, and he's here in the middle of the stage conducting. And I'm just now, I'm not there, but it seemed like 10 minutes, not even, because, I'm just trying to put this little 3-piece kit together on the stage, and he's like this, standing up there, and I just happened to make eye contact with the guy, the conductor, Teddy A. Michelson, and it's from Norway. Is it Norway? Yeah. And so he just stand there, and I made eye contact with him, and he looks at me, and as I look at him, he goes, "Are you ready?" Just like that. And I'm like, "I'm ready." And the orchestra started just like that. It was insane. And I'm playing, and I jump in the first rehearsal. It's only 20 minutes or so because it was at the end of the day. But we got through it. I was like, incredible, phenomenal. Oh my God, I could not believe what that felt like and sounded like. It was the most amazing awe experience I ever had. Well, day 2. We're doing a show day 3. But day 2 comes up, and we never even rehearsed the whole show at this point. We're just rehearsing a piece of music and this and that. And I'm like, okay, that was cool. But I still got to play all this other music. So now we come back and we play a piece, and we actually did that same piece. And I witnessed right then and there it was mind-boggling because Mark told me when I was coming out to that the conductor would follow me, which was all a bunch of bullshit. Not true. But I had to follow him. I didn't know how to follow him. So I was trying to trust my ears, but I could only bullshit myself and him so far before I got found out. And I got found out big time. So now he starts the song. And boom, he comes down and I come down. I'm early and he stops the orchestra just like that. And he looks at me and he goes, Troy, he goes, watch me. We come around, same thing, same cue. Boom, man, I crash and burn. I come in early again. He stops the orchestra, doesn't even look at me, says something in the Mongolian language, I guess. And he looked to the right and he walked off the stage. The whole orchestra stood up and left the stage. And I'm sitting on my drums like, what just happened? And I knew right then and there I had bit off more I could chew. And I knew, and I was just, at that point, I just went to fear mode because all my confidence was gone. And we got in a taxi. The four of us drove back to the hotel. And it was pitch silence. I mean, nobody said a word. And we got in the lobby, and Teddy, he says, dinner in 10 minutes. So everybody meet back here. I go up there. I put the headphones on. I'm listening to the music. I'm going, damn, I know the music. I just don't know how to follow this guy. I don't know. This is horrible. Now I got to play the show the next day. We got to do full rehearsal in the morning, then do the show that night. And we hadn't even been through all the material, So anyway, we go to dinner. I'm sitting here. You would be Mark. And Teddy A was over here to my left, and Travis was next to me. So the four of us, and they're all chopping it up. And I got there, and the waitress comes over, and I order my food, and I don't say a word. I'm still like freaking out, and then Teddy A just looks at me, and goes, Troy, he goes, picture yourself driving a car. He goes, you get to the busy intersection. You take your foot off the gas. And then you punch it! I'm like, interpretation, right? You get it?
Yeah.
So in other words, drop the time, forget about time, because we never played it the same. That was one thing I experienced. I'm like, oh my God, you have to watch the guy. You have to know, because those breaks, he can hold it up as long as he wants and make it as dramatic as he wants. And he would, and did. And so now I got to go home. I have dinner. I go upstairs. I can't sleep. I'm listening to music over and over. I'm like, it's not shutting off my head. I'm freaking out. I'm in Mongolia. I got to play live with this orchestra. And I'm just like, I'm done. How am I going to do this? Oh my God, the fear is so strong. I'm exhausted by the time I wake up the next day and have to be early morning in the lobby to go do a full rehearsal. Sound check, video wall, the whole bit, man. Big deal. Black tie, full on, man. And we went through everything. And I just sat there like a deer in the headlights. And I'll be honest with you, I got through it. I did it. And it built my level of confidence. It was like, thank God, I needed that little bit. I felt like I just squeaked by, and I didn't even know if I was going to get through the gig, but I just did it. I did do it, so maybe I could do it again, And then we did the gig that night. I remember the curtain was closed. So I remember grabbing my camera, snapping people in their pictures and getting photos of people because it was so amazing. I'm in Mongolia with this orchestra, and Keith Emerson was not on this gig. We were playing some of the ELP stuff, but he wasn't on it. And so now we do the gig, and it went great. And I got through it. Everything was great. And I was like, oh my God, I did it. And I couldn't believe it. The next day, we're going to leave, and Mark's telling me that they're going to Germany to record. No, they're going to Germany. They had another. I thought they were doing another thing in Germany, like the same thing that we just did, like a gig. So I'm like, yeah, I'd like to do it. And then we were talking. I found out later that day, like, we were doing a record. I go, we're doing a record? He goes, yeah, we're going to record with the orchestra. I go, we are? And I go, so this was the deal right then and there. First of all, I'm a man of God and faith. I have a real strong relationship with my higher power, my Lord, Jesus Christ, period. And I said, I remember looking up and apologizing to God, the fact that I doubted and I had that fear and I went to those places and I didn't trust and stay there in it. And I just made an apology. And I said, not only am I going to do this, I'm going to go have a great time and I'm going to play my ass off. And that's what I did, man. I got the gig and I went home and shedded. Mark told me we were doing Tarkus. And I'm like, I never even heard the song. And I'm like, I heard about that crazy 20-minute monster, but we're going to play that thing? He goes, yeah. And I go, okay. So anyway, I went home and I shedded and I practiced and he sent me stuff. And, you know, what happened was we went to Munich, Germany. I met Mark in Los Angeles. It was me, him, and Travis did one day rehearsal. The second day was me, Mark, Travis, and Keith. The third day was me, Mark, Travis, and Keith, and the conductor. And then we all jumped on a plane and we flew to Germany, and we spent 8 days there, I think, 8-9 days there. And we did 5.5 days of recording, Monday through Friday, half day on Saturday, 10 to 4, 2 15-minute breaks with a half-hour lunch break. And we recorded what became the Three Fates project, all live, no rehearsals with the orchestra, first and second takes, full performances with the orchestra, and I managed to get through everything. And everybody was very happy, and it went well, and I learned a lot from all of that. And it was probably the most amazing experience I've ever had, musically, education-wise, and such. You know, just phenomenal, man. And I got to spend the last 2 nights with Keith, going out on the town with him, having dinner and sharing stories. And then I was supposed to go do the live thing with him, and before he passed, you know, Mark and I, we were all set up. You know, flights were booked, and we had 8 sold-out shows in Japan, and unfortunately, that didn't happen.
I met you in Sacramento. We hung out when you were, I don't know, you were with your, I think, then girlfriend, now wife, and we went to Denny's or something like that. And you had told me the story. I have a music subscription, an Apple subscription, and I download these things. And I got to tell you that Three Fates record, and I know I grew up with that. That was since I was, 11 or 12, my first concert was ELP, and it was my big influence, right? And man, you just played great. I mean, it was amazing. You nailed the parts, better. Like the all those intricate, that I grew up with. I mean, those parts. It was phenomenal, and I love that record. I had it. I'd keep listening to it, and he did a few of these bands with Keith Emerson Band and the Three Fates Band and all that. But I really particularly like that. I got to say it's one of my favorites. And kind of going to my next question too is that your skills, like you have these skills, you have great time, you have these great instincts, you learn all these things on the job. What are some of these things that are the most important skills for drummers that you can recommend? So I hear these records that you do, and your time is amazing. I mean, your meter, your pocket, your groove, everything's just amazing to me.
Well, thank you.
And so how do you do that? Like, well, how do you How do you develop the sense of the sound, the touch, the pocket, the timekeeping, the technique, like all these skills that you need to have to be able to do these things you've done in your career?
God, first of all, thank you. You said a lot of nice, wonderful things. And I mean, it's interesting. I, I guess playing to the records and playing original music and coming up with parts and ideas and being a song guy, and because of the guys like Nigel Olsson, I was a song guy. I loved songs, even though I loved, I wasn't just that hard hitter, and I never wanted to be just a rock and roll drummer. I wanted to play music, and there's a lot of good music out there. And when I got turned on to Jeff Porcaro and Steve Gadd, those guys, were huge influences. Not that I wanted to be those guys. I never did. I never wanted to be Steve or any. I just wanted to be myself. I wanted to develop. The only thing I really truly wanted and was hoping to do, and I may have achieved it, possibly, was to be that Kenny Aronoff guy or John Bonham who brought a sound to a. You listen to all those Mellencamp records, and you're like, Kenny was part of that sound, and that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to have a signature and a voice of my own, and I think that just kind of developed from a lot of desire and finding ways to know what it is I didn't want to do and who I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be I wanted to be a round player, not a square player, if that makes any sense. Because a lot of rock and roll, 80s rock could be real square. And, I wanted to have enough finesse and techniques to where I could round it out and play dynamically and, be able to pull off these things that I didn't know I could do. I had no idea. And God bless Mark for, the fact that he could put that on me to believe in me that way. That to this day, I just can't even, it just mind boggles me, but anyway, but I guess, you've got to be listening to the right guys, and you got to have a focus to know what it is you want, and you got to have the right group of musicians. Think of John Bonham with Led Zeppelin, and you think of Stuart Copeland with the Police. You think about Neil Peart. These are guys that had the right bands to do the music, and it's the same way I think for me and Tesla. There was something happening within our music and the things that we were doing because we weren't just the average 80s band. I had dynamics to my playing, and things. And Modern Day came out, the things that put me on the map, and back when I think about the Eric Martin record, it was interesting. That record I'm playing toms, a lot of toms on that record. And there's some really nice things I did at a young age that I took for granted, and maybe that's what Steve saw in me, but I just there was just so many great guys. Mickey Curry, Tony Brock was one of my favorite drummers from the Babies. These were guys that were musical players. They weren't chop guys. I wasn't interested in chop guys. And I wasn't interested in chops. Doesn't mean I didn't love Vinny. Of course, everybody loves Vinny. But, and Steve and all of that. But, they played great music. And you look at all that music that Steve created with Journey. It's phenomenal. To this day, when I hear that stuff on the radio, I'm like, God, I gotta grow up. And I was very blessed that, I don't take that for granted that Steve at the time, he gave me some of his time, I'm forever grateful for that, It's unfortunate I haven't talked to him for a long time, but beautiful, those guys that had those voices. Music was different, and I never wanted to be the 80s drummer, that was happening in that scene. I just wanted to be who I guess I've become to be. I was just trying to find myself, and try to develop so I could step out of the box and do something like that, because that's all I ever wanted as a kid. I wanted to be a good drummer. It wasn't about fame or fortune or, anything else, man. And that's all I ever wanted to be. And I got to tell you something in that story with Keith, man, because I never believed any of what I could see in myself. I just was never that guy. But when I got done with the very last recording, what happened was we did a song called Fanfare for the Common Man. Now, that was the only song we did not record with the orchestra. We recorded as a three-piece. We weren't supposed to do that song. And what happened was they go, hey, we're going to do Fanfare. And I'm like, oh, God, I only played it one time in that rehearsal with Keith, but I put it aside because they said we weren't doing it, so I haven't even learned it. And there was a little bar of five in there that would come around, and I couldn't remember. So right when he said that, I just put the headphones on, and I listened to it through, and I'm like, it was my computer in getting ready to track it. I listened to it one time through. I put the headphone down. I said, okay, let's go. And Mark and I, we played it one time, only one time. And it was the three of us. Everything was done. It was the last thing we did on that Saturday early afternoon. And I just remember right when we hit that last note, Mark didn't even look at me. He turned around, he threw his guitar off, he set it down, and he walked off the floor. And I think we just did it, And sure enough, that was the take. It was the only take that we did. And I walked into this little room right next door to my room. I was in an ISO booth, and the orchestra was outside on the other side of the glass. And I just walked in this little room, man. I'm going to tell you, Rob, I cried like a baby, dude. I could not believe what just happened. I could not believe I was part of this most amazing thing that I was like chosen for this. And I really believe that today. Maybe because I never believed I was anything. And it's not a humble thing, man. It's not. It's just I never believed it because I knew who the great guys were. I could never be one of those great guys because I just didn't have the tools to be that guy. I didn't have the education. I didn't have this. I didn't have, all the stuff I didn't have, And but I was like, well, you got to have something to do this gig. You got to have something going on. And I was just so proud and so amazed and so blown away the fact that I just lived that experience, But and I'm not cocky about it. I'm never like, oh, look what I did. It's just by the grace, but for the grace of God, truly, man. I mean, I really recognized what happened there, and I've been, to have it end so tragically with Keith, which was so sad because he was such a gentleman. And, the whole time we recorded, the only one thing he ever said to me, I went to talk to him about something once. And I go, oh, no, this was the only thing he ever said in the rehearsal to me. He goes, Troy, that there one section right there, could you do me a favor and put the bass drum? I just need like 4 hits. So right there, you're just going to go boom, 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 boom. Okay, you got that? We're just going to put like 4 little bass drum hits. It's just going to go boom, boom. That was it. That was the quote unquote, the only thing he ever said to me the whole time we recorded and worked together. One time I went to go defer to him to ask him a question. He goes, ask Mark. That was it. I mean, but we went out. What a gentleman. He was such a gentleman. Just crazy, man. Again, I put my time in, and I guess I developed myself through Tesla, but I wanted to get outside of that box. I got to play on some Frida Payne record. That was really nice, an R&B record, a couple tracks, and I got play some brushes on a Doris Day record. I suck at brushes, but I did it. But I did, those are different. I do a lot of work. I've done probably a lot just in the last few weeks. I've been putting out videos. If you go to my YouTube, you'll see more things coming out too that I've just got done. But I've just managed to stay busy. I never looked for work. I'm still practicing. I get on my practice pad. I still love to practice, man. I still love it. Just that's how we are. You know how we are.
All these things with Tesla, and that had stopped. Why did you decide to take private lessons again? when you already had all these skills and everything, why did you decide to go back and study privately with and seeking out teachers?
Um, because I knew I was living a lie inside myself, knowing that I had all this success and all these things were happening, and it was all surface and looked good on the outside, but I did not have the skill set that I needed. And I had to start working harder at that. And, and that's why I called Steve, and, really, I mean, the perfect guy ended up was with you. I mean, there was no question about it. Another God moment in my life, I mean, it was perfect. The relationship was fantastic. I learned, what I needed to know. And the only reason, I don't know if you remember, after I was there a solid year, and I took classical piano for a year at the same time. And the only reason I quit at that time, I don't know if you remember, but I started the roofing company, and I couldn't do both. And I mean, I had Thomas Pridgeon. He was one of my students. Remember Thomas?
Talk about, yeah, I remembered that his grandma would take him to your
Yeah,
place, and I remember that you were teaching him. And then
crazy.
I've seen, when he came up, he studied with everybody, right? But
Yes, yes. He came off. What happened was him and his grandma showed up at my door, and he was 15, and he just came from David Garibaldi at the time. And I'm thinking, first of all, like, I don't know anything about Thomas. I'm like, okay, so he sat down and he played, and I was like, I mean, he was Thomas at 15. He was doing that stuff. I mean, he was phenomenal. And I had to really check my ego. I'm like, man, what can I do for this kid? I mean, if I would have sat next to him, he just would have freaking tore me up. I mean, he had more chops than, I wasn't a chop guy, but I could, and I just really had to think about it. And I asked myself, like, wow, what can I offer this kid? And then I just remember asking him, I said, what are your plans? What are you doing? And he says, well, I'm getting ready to go to Berkeley. And I said, do you read? He says, no. So I started him in syncopation. And we started working through syncopation, and took him through some paradiddle stuff, because I was always into the paradiddle stuff. But anything I'd take him and show it to him, he'd just bastardize it right in front of me. I mean, he'd grab everything, man, and even the reading thing, he'd be bored, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. Whatever. I mean, it's just like, but it was a beautiful. I had him for a few months, and he was really bummed when I had to let it go. We had a good solid 2 months of lessons, and he showed up every week. And I was committed to my teaching. I really was. I was serious about it, just like I was serious about studying and reinventing myself and getting to another place. And so, those are, some highlights to look at a kid like that, so young and talented, come into the picture. And I remember he was doing a clinic with Chambers, Dennis, and he was opening the clinic. And I met Dennis, and we were talking, and I was talking to him about Thomas, and he goes, yeah, well, there's this other kid in Atlanta. His name's Tony Royster. He starts telling me about Tony being 15, and he goes, I don't know where they see. We just made jokes about the kids, like just how phenomenal they are. And, so, yeah, and then I watched, him progress and, go through life, and I haven't talked to him in quite some time. Hopefully he's doing well, but yeah, nice memories, But the reason for it was I just never believed it, man. I didn't believe any of this stuff and all the success and all the things. It didn't fix that void and that hole inside of me of not being that guy, But just because you got platinum records on the wall
Yeah.
It
Nice.
doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't fill the void, man. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, man. It's an inside job.
Hmm. So would you say some of the curriculum you got out of studying with me in the past had helped you? Like I worked on technique and reading, and we worked on some concepts with the syncopation book. I think I did some Gary Chafee stuff with you. I think we did some different drum set concepts. Did that stuff help you, do you think, when you were studying with me at the time, right before you did the Luccketta roofing?
I probably can't emphasize enough, Rob. I mean, it completely filled the void for me. It really did, man. It gave me the tools and the confidence. It was a total confidence builder because it took all the stuff that I didn't know and the things that I needed to do, and it gave me the tools to move forward and teach and work on this stuff. And I still use it to this day. I'm telling you, man, that whole note rate thing and starting people over is everything, and I get it. And we were on those note rates for months. I
Yeah.
mean, the first 8 weeks, man. You know, and the hand, the technique. And it's so funny because I man, things happen as they happen for everybody. Some people start very young with lessons, and I'm glad that my story worked out the way it did, because it gave me a chance to um, kind of be my own guy, just not knowing what I was doing. And then I got to learn a little bit more about what I was doing and start to build that in. And anytime I played music, I always took the studying thing and I just kind of put it aside and put it on the shelf. So, I think the thing about, working with you, Rob, I mean, it was just a total game changer. It was a confidence builder. It gave me the tools to teach the students that I had while I was working, and I was, I never got to do the Berkeley thing or the school thing or the college thing. I mean, North Texas. I got to spend a lot of time with the guy who's kind of mentored me. He doesn't probably realize it too much. A guy named Rich Redmond. Do you know who that is?
No.
He's plays with a guy named Jason Aldean. He's a country drummer out here who's a North Texas guy, phenomenal drummer. And him and Jim Riley from Rascal Flatts. So I got to do his drum camp, and I got to learn a lot hanging around those guys. And that's what I do, man. I just sit there and soak as much of this stuff in and take it home because I never got that side of it. So, but the one thing I'm still doing is playing music, and it's always been about music for me, and I play in a classic rock band. I've been doing sessions out here. I've done a few dozen records out here for people. I just did a session with a band that came in from Boston, all of us playing live, and that was fantastic. And I'm still figuring it out. Excuse me. So I'm still putting the time in.
Yeah, you always seem to be working every time I talk to you. It's you moved around a little bit. I think you're in Arizona and you were working there. I remember you had the studio, and then I remember you had a studio in Hayward, right at the border of Hayward and Castro Valley, and the piano studio. It's still
I
there.
remember you playing my drums in there.
Yeah, so that place is still there. And then I remember you moving to Arizona, and you had the TML studio.
Studios, and I still do. And speaking of Arizona, I'm so I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I forget about sometimes is the people that have shaped me. Another guy that I didn't get. I'll be honest with you. I followed him everywhere. This guy Dom Moyo. I don't know if you know who he is, but look him up. I called David Garibaldi. I go, David, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. I need somebody to study with. And he goes, call Dom Moyo. So I did. and I spent a lot of time with Dom. And he taught at Mesa Community College. He goes, Troy, just sign up for my class for $55, and you can take a semester with me down there. And it's a 2-hour class on Mondays, I think it was. And I did that. And I would go. There'd be these kids in there, with playing, it's all Latin jazz stuff. So, and I got to learn a lot from him, and spend a lot of time with him. And another confidence builder, because I didn't know how to hit a conga. I got one over here. Not that I still know how to, but can't really hear it here. But if I have it, he taught me how to do just a simple little tumbao, right? Look. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. I knew nothing about hitting a conga or playing and, learn how to slap them. And I still suck at the slap, but I learned some things. I learned some rhythms. I learned some cascada, however you say it. Cascada, help me out.
Cascara.
Cascara, but the way he would say it, at any rate. But, and it was really cool. So I learned all these different Latins and these rhythms and, and just spend time with him, following him around, a lot of freeform jazz stuff that I never played. But when you hang around that stuff, you get some of that stuff through osmosis, And, and we would solo back and forth. And I've done some stuff. There's some videos of him and I on my Facebook of us playing. And he was just in Montreal, and I just ran into him this last year. Phenomenal drummer. Great, beautiful touch, man. Does lots of records. So, I'm still, it's funny now that we're in this pandemic thing. I'm in the middle of my book, and I'll have that done here, which is exciting. And I got the Troy Shows Up program, and I'm working on all that stuff. I'm still thinking about what is my next move? What am I committed to? What am I doing? I get up, I'm going to go to bed at midnight. I'm up at 5:36 every day. It's just how it's been. Maybe the roofing company's had something to do with that. I don't know. My sense that I've always been that way. But yeah, man, and I burn it down, through the day, and I'm busy, and I stayed busy, I managed to, stay busy doing lots of recordings. I'm just still cranking stuff out, and some days I get on the drums, and I'll be honest with you, I just feel like I really got to use it or lose it, man, especially at my age. I'm 60 now, so, I'm still in fairly good shape. The band helped, but, I'm home now, so I'm going to have to work a little harder. I have some other opportunities that I'm looking into that we'll see what transpires out of that, because, none of us know where this thing's going.
Yeah. It's very uncertain. And as far as I look at things, you have to make a change and go with it. You have to do different things. That's why I tell everybody it's things aren't going to be the way they were. So you got to look at different things that you can do. Taking it a different route, or a corner, turning the corner, and seeing what else you can do to do things differently and be productive, which is what I'm trying to do. But I know that things will never be the same the way we had it before, and I'm sure you're touring constantly. We're probably on a tour, and maybe it got canceled, but I know for me, it's like everything on my books just stopped instantly. Everything was in March. It was boom, done. So we have the practicing, and we have the studying, and we have the teaching online, and for me, I get into technology and all these different things and try to better myself, and so we have things to look forward to, because I think in the long run we're going to come out of this stronger, but it's going to take a while.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right, and I think for me, I'm thinking about, again, like, what is my next move? I know that I'm still love playing and working on things, and it's funny you just mentioned the technological side of things. I need to spend more time in that arena and and there's a lot of great tools out there that would be really cool is to be able to put a show together with just me and a drum kit and some electronics and some loops and, maybe how can I be creative and do something? So, and it's funny, I've thought about this. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. I might be able to come up with some things, and I'm probably going to, continue to maybe put some stuff out there online of playing and teaching and just little things and, doing tracks for people. I have my studio set up. I can do that. But, there's probably, I know we're not back to anything until next year. And I mean, everything's just so uncertain. So I can't plan on that, I've got to figure just like the rest of the world, but so, yeah, we'll see where that goes.
And you have the big ranch out there, and you're able to practice every day, and you're saying that you're still doing demos. I remember you were telling me the other day that you're recording for people. I guess you're doing remote recording,
I
right?
am. I'm doing some remote recording, and if you, I don't know if you've seen on my Facebook, but you'll see Mark Benny and I just did a remote recording. Sent me a guitar track and I played a drum track and then the bass player. Everybody did that whole thing. So there's one of those videos out. I did one with my cousin. I just did two with Tesla. I'm doing another one for this guy, Chuck Wright. Just finishing that. I'll do that. I'm shooting that tomorrow. And I sent off a thing for Dave Ellison from Megadeth. I just did a track for him for the single on his solo record. And I just did a 5-song EP for these people out of Boston. We did all that live here. And I just did another track for this guy, Dakota Denman, which I finished up with him last night. And there's some other stuff out there that I'm not thinking about. But it's all good because now people want video with it, right? So the thing about that is you got to get it in a full performance. You got to, like, you see the Mark Bonilla thing and what I did with my cousin. And actually Mark's, I did 2 performances and I sent him both video clips and he liked the first half of one and the second half of another. And I took my hat off on the second one. So it's like half of it I got a hat on, the second half it's gone. And I was like, that's great. I got no problem with that. I don't have no problem telling how I do what I do, and if I got to punch in on something, I'm punching in, whatever it takes to get the performance. But I do a lot of live recordings, and that's fine. And but when it comes down to making records, it's all about whatever it takes to make the record. We don't. A lot of people here in Nashville, everything's done. First, second take. They're so good, the musicians here, at what they do in their sessions. Not something I've pursued. I've done a lot of records here, which has been nice. But I don't go pursue being a session drummer here in Nashville. I don't have no desire to be that guy, actually. At least at this time. Maybe now would be a good time, but who knows how that's working. I think people are still working, but at the time, I just always, wanted to kind of do my own thing, how I'm doing it, and people want me to play on the records, cool, but I need to continue my education. I know that.
So, what would you just going through all these things in your life and all these experiences and challenges and still in demand and recording, what kind of advice would you give to young musicians or people growing up now that want to be in the music business and who are practicing and have the desire? What would you recommend? What advice would you give to them?
Well, we're dealing with a very different time than what we grew up with. And it seems to me that now there's so much technology out there that whatever you want, it's on YouTube. You can find it anywhere. it was a very different time for us, you know. So I would take advantage of the technology first and foremost, knowing that whatever it is you want to do, it's out there, and there's people that you can learn from that have already done it. I mean, everything's there. So first and foremost, you just have to decide what it is you want to be. And you have to believe in yourself and never give up that dream, you know, and you have to be passionate, I feel. Because if you're passionate about what you do and you're doing it for the right reasons, you know, good things will come. You know, not everybody wins the lottery and everybody gets to do my side of it, but there's so many different factors and sides of this music business and ways to play music and be successful. You know, and it's okay to keep raising the bar, which I do. You know, I just say, you know, don't give up on the dream. You know, put the time in. You know, find the good teachers. You know, it's easier for me to say today, knowing what I've learned. You know, but music first. You know, put the headphones on, play music. You know, the studying has to be there. You've got to get some tools under your belt. You know, learn as many different styles as you can. You don't have to be experts in these fields, but it's good. It's good to know, you know, shuffles and, you know, some bossa novas and just some basic, what would be considered basics to, you know, straight 2 and 4, you know. But playing 2 records, you know, and that ear training, there's something to be said for that. So yeah, just take advantage of what's out there. Don't give up on yourself and don't give up on the dream, you know, and try not to be discouraged in these tough times.
Great. Well, hey, Troy, thanks for doing this. It's been great hanging out with you, and I totally appreciate it. And let's catch up soon when our schedules allow it.
I like that. That would work. And God bless you, Rob. It's always a pleasure, my friend.
All right, Troy. Have a great one and take it easy and stay safe.
Peace.
Peace. Peace and love. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.